the show with your friend and mine. So tell me, Dr. Squee, who's it gonna be this time? We like to hear you talk, and we love to hear you listen. And if you are not subscribed, you won't know what you're missing. So welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Headphones up. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. We're finally back for 2022. Sorry about the slight delay in new shows, but I was bitten by the vid. It finally caught up with me and I'm feeling a lot better now. I just want to thank everyone for the lovely messages while we're off air for just a couple of weeks there. But as I say, we're back for 2022 and in rare fashion. Now, if I say the name of my guest tonight, Todd Tucker, spoiler alert, you may not know the name, but you will certainly know the work. He's a makeup artist who's also worked as a director and an actor, a writer. He's done pretty much everything. When I mentioned the projects he's been in, the original Flash TV show, The Pit and the Pendulum, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, Hook, Mrs. Doubtfire, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Jim Carrey's The Mask, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. There is literally too much to go through here, but we're going to do our best for the next hour. And he's here, of course, to also talk about, my camera just went off at that moment. And he's here also to talk about his work on the new Netflix Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where he worked on the look of the new Leatherface. Please welcome to the Dr. Squee Show, Todd Tucker. How are you doing, Todd?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on, and I'm glad to hear you're feeling better.
Thank you very much. What I've said is like it was, I think, a milder case of COVID, but it will suffice. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, apparently it's not fun no matter how you get it.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend it, basically, but
No.
It sounds like we're all going to get it in this next wave.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, sir, like I digress. We've got so much to get through. You've had a busy old career right there, I can see.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I started back right around the early 90s and got in with a really good group of people and got to work on some major films right out of the gate and got a lot of high-end experience very quickly. But I was very lucky. I got to work with great artists and great actors and directors, and I knew that eventually I wanted to direct and produce my own films also. So I got to really study on set in person some of my favorite directors like Spielberg and Coppola and Cameron and all these amazing directors. So I've been very fortunate.
And for you, where does the interest begin in makeup effects?
Well, I was an only child with a lot of time on my hands, and I was very artistic, maybe a little autistic, I don't know. But I started doing this when I was younger. I started making stuff in my garage and putting on plays and, all theatrical stuff. I was obsessed with movies. And I was fortunate enough to meet these two guys just as I was about to graduate high school, these two guys named Matt Rose and Steve Wang. And they became my mentors and taught me how to do special effects and how to sculpt and paint and create creatures and design and do all that. And then I went off and was a studio musician and was touring with a band for a few years while I was practicing my effects at the same time. And while Matt and Steve went down to Los Angeles and started working on Aliens, that was their first big movie. And they got really ingrained in the industry and got a name for themselves. And then a few years later, I decided that I wanted to start doing effects. I put music aside. I moved down to Los Angeles and was fortunate enough to start working right away on some pretty major films. And it was a whole goal that I had to eventually get into writing and directing and acting and just kind of do all the different things that I wanted to do. And I've been very fortunate enough to be able to do that. So I will say to anyone out there, if you have something in life that you want to do, don't let anyone tell you can't do it. Just go do it.
Fantastic advice. And, we mentioned one of your first credit on IMDb is The Pit and the Pendulum. Straight out of the gate, you're sucking into the mind of Edgar Allan Poe. What kind of things did you end up working in on that? And how did it feel to work on such a big production so early on?
Well, believe it or not, it was already a good portion of the movie had already been shot, and they needed to add all these effect shots into it. So, and I had literally just started working at the company that we were doing this for like a week before. So they needed to have there's a part where a corpse rises from the ground, and I volunteered right off the bat to be the guy underneath the corpse to make it rise and puppeteer it, because I was a huge Henson fan, and I puppeteered a lot and wore creature suits enough. So I was like throwing myself in the mix every time I could. And it was kind of funny because we built this stage at our studio, and we built this corpse puppet, and I got underneath the stage, and they brought the film crew there, and we shot everything there as inserts. And there was a guy there shooting smoke underneath the stage to make it look like smoke was coming up from the body, and he kept shooting this grease oil onto my arm, and it kept burning my arm. So you'll see the puppet kind of shaking as it's lifting, and it's me getting scolded by oil. So I learned
I'm
right
sure it
off
looked
the
very
bat that
dramatic
it's
when it
going to be
starts shaking,
fun
though.
but painful.
We are going to sort of jump about a little bit. As I say, there's just such an embarrassment of riches you worked on. Something which I found very interesting was you worked on the original Flash TV show with John Wesley Shipp. And back then, it seems to me that now, if you worked on a DC show, you would have so many restrictions, so many kind of guidelines, which way you've got to put it. It feels like back then you maybe had a bit more creative freedom. Was that the case?
Well, it's funny because that was actually the very first thing I ever worked on. The very first day I started at the company that I was with for many, many years, we did the first Flash episode, and we didn't build the suit. That was another company. We kind of came in and did all of the creatures of the week and the different villains and stuff. So, and that was before superhero movies were superhero movies. Nothing really had been out at that point that was a big, blockbuster superhero movie. So, yeah, it was a lot less intense, I guess you would say, a little bit more open creatively. It was interesting because the very first, again, I kept throwing myself in the mix. There was a scene in this episode of The Flash where a bad guy turned himself into a werewolf. And there's a scene where he's morphing into the werewolf in a dumpster in downtown LA. And we were asked to go down and do this. And of course, me like an idiot, I'm like, I'll do it. So they threw me in a dumpster downtown LA with this puppet. And I realized while I was in the dumpster puppeteering the werewolf that there were like rats in the dumpster with me. so we shot that as quickly as we could so I could get the hell out of there and not get bit and get weird rabies or something. But it was a lot of fun. The show was fun, and my all-time favorite monster is werewolf. So for me to work on a werewolf for the first thing out of the gate was really pretty cool for me personally.
Oh, it sounds fantastic. Are you able to just turn your volume up just a little bit, your end?
Turn it off or turn it what?
Turn it up just a little bit. Your volume just a little bit.
My volume, believe it or not, is all the way up.
No problem. We'll go through it.
I can talk a little closer if you need me to, or a little louder.
Not a problem at all. And does that kind of like working on the Flash and getting right in there with it? No one can say when you're writing and directing that you haven't been there in the trenches yourself. Does it inform when you go on to do something later like The Watchmen?
Yeah, Watchmen was awesome because Zach basically told us to buy multiple copies of the book, of the novel, and that was going to be our resource for the entire film. So anytime we had a question on that film, we went right to the novel, and that was our answer. So he was so adamant about staying true to that novel that it kind of simplified things because we could get answers more quickly. And it was just a huge movie to work on. We did a lot of the likeness makeups of the different presidents and the historical characters, along with the old age on the comedian character. And we had nothing to do with the Blue character, but we did a lot of the gore and all that stuff. And it shot up in Canada. We would go back and forth to Canada, and the sets were huge. I mean, it was a pretty massive, really cool movie to work on.
Yeah, and being the artistic director on a comic book movie, what does that exactly entail? Because I think sometimes some of the titles behind the jobs that you've done, familiar to a lot of us, and exactly what that entails within that movie.
Well, for that movie, For the Watchmen, basically, I was one of the owners of the shop at that time, and um, we had a team of probably 20 people, I think, creatively, that we were jumping in and sculpting and painting, and then I supervised everybody and jumped in there creatively a few times, but it was a huge build. And then I had to go on set and do some of the makeups and just kind of oversee and make sure that everything went accordingly and that there were no creative issues, and just make sure that the quality of everything was everything that we promised Zach he would have. And again, that was a tough one too, because for us, we did a lot of the likeness makeups, and they would send us photos of the people that they wanted us to create the makeups on, and some of them were so far from what the guy looked like that we weren't able to do it. We had to tell him we need a face structure that we can work with in order to create these makeups. So that was really tough, getting some of the Canadian actors or LA actors to have their face structure be close enough for us to be able to add the appliances on to really make them look like the people that we were making. But we got close on a few of them, and some of them I don't think we got close at all.
It's an absolutely spectacular film, and the thing which I know, which goes, especially with someone like Zack Snyder, you have so much which is kind of prepped and planned in advance. But I know also on these huge things, there are also things which go wrong on the day. Was there anything which you had to kind of last minute do a workaround or something different with?
There's, I mean, every movie, every single time you go on set of a movie, there's some challenge that you can't expect, and you don't expect, and you can't really prepare for. So, I mean, it was just kind of the normal stuff, like just, I mean, nothing really, there was no tragedies or anything that really went wrong on that project. It was just hard that, you know, trying to make these likeness makeups, likeness makeups, old age makeups are really hard. But once you kind of figure them out, because I worked on Benjamin Buttons back in the day, and we, by that time, we'd done enough likeness makeups, so we kind of had a rhythm to what it was. Or not like this, old age makeups. When we do likeness makeups, it's really hard, because I worked on white chicks also, and when we tried to do the Wayans brothers to look like the girls that they had hired to be the original girls that we were trying to match, it's really hard, and that really didn't work either, to be honest with you. The makeups were okay, and the guys did a great job as those girls, but the makeups didn't really look like the girls. So that's always the hardest challenge I get, is likeness makeups, unless it's just on stunt people, because we do a lot of stunt people likeness makeups, which they don't do as much now because they can do digital face replacement. But back in the day, we did a lot of likeness makeups, but it didn't matter. It was somebody swinging through a shot and it wasn't focused on. When it's a focused makeup and it's right there, the biggest thing on the screen, those are really tough to do sometimes. And I think Watchmen, had that was the biggest issue we had, was making those likeness makeups work.
I think you like, I mean, this may be is my age talking here. I feel like you're a real makeup person if you had to go through that kind of painstakingly creating stuff as opposed to doing it all digitally. That's a skill in itself, and I don't mean to take anything away from it, but there's something just so wonderful about the hands-on nature of the way it used to be made.
Well, I'll tell you what. One of my greatest experiences. I worked with Mel Gibson a lot. We did a lot of old age movies with him. We did Forever Young and Man Without a Face, and I got to work hands-on with him. And then I was working with him on a film, and he was telling me that he was going to do this Jesus movie. And I was like, wow, well, please let us be involved and we talked him into letting us do all the digital, which we weren't a digital company. We're a makeup company. So we opened up a digital company across the street and got to come up with a lot of inventive ways that hadn't been done before, of combining digital effects and practical effects for the film. And we did over 148, I think it was 148 visual effects combinations. So, really sometimes the best way to get a finished character or a finished element is to combine digital and practical, and start with as much practical as you can. But it's really hard for the audience to tell that there are digital effects when you have a lot of practical elements mixed in. So I got a really good education, which for me as a director was great, because I could use that for all of the films that I direct and produce, that knowledge of how to do that. But a lot of makeup people for a long time were like, oh, we hate digital. But the reality is it's very different. And now A lot of people want to use practical makeups a lot more than digital. So there is a good combination of makeup and practical. And you see a lot more practical makeups nowadays.
Yeah, my understanding is that now, even in shots which we would never imagine there's visual effects in, something's gone on in the background to make it look exactly how we see it on screen.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is it's really what I learned as a filmmaker is if you can film a practical element and digitally put it into a shot, it's still a real element. It's not a digital element that has something about it that might just feel unnatural. It's real. So if you film fire against a green screen and then put that fire into a shot, it's still fire. So as long as you can clean it up and make it not have, you know, a look of two different elements, it looks completely believable. So, you know, to be able to do that with characters, and there was a movie called Pan's Labyrinth that came out years ago, and they did a really nice combination of digital and practical characters. And I think that opened the door for a lot of filmmakers to want to combine that a lot more, because you can really do a lot of great stuff and cheat the audience so they don't know how you did it.
One which I have to ask you about, just because I'm a huge nerd of lots of stripes, but certainly for Star Trek is a big one for me. Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country, widely regarded as one of the best Star Trek movies. Please say you've got to work on some Klingons.
I didn't. I'm sorry. I would love to tell you I did, but you know what? We only did one thing for that movie, but it was a really cool thing. We made the Klingon dog.
The Tog.
The dog, yeah. We had a giant Malamute. I think it was a Malamute. Trained Malamute came in, and we did a head cast of the dog. I don't know how the hell we did that, but we did a cast of his head, and we actually created a head that he could wear. And the dog was okay with it. I mean, I was originally like, man, this is going to be, you know, torturous for the dog, but the dog actually enjoyed it. I don't know why. And we made that dog, and it was the weirdest thing in the world because it moved like an animal, but it was a giant monster.
You know,
It was
I
pretty
will
cool. I
take a
wish we had done
Klingon
the
dog.
Klingons.
I'll
I wish
take
we
it.
had done a lot more, but they had already done everything. And I guess last minute they decided they need this dog. And, you know, they would have done it digitally if it had been that time, but it wasn't digital time yet. That hadn't shown up yet. So this was a little bit before digital. So they had to do it practically.
Oh, and I'm glad the dog had a good time. That's nice to hear as a dog lover myself.
He actually did. I swear to God, I was kind of surprised because I felt bad at first putting the dog in the suit, but the trainer was really good with the dog, and the dog was really I don't know how to say it. I guess it was a real positive dog. It was a very happy dog, so it was a good experience.
And I'm starting to run out of ways of saying about how these wonderful worlds you got to play in, but Hook with Robin Williams, it seems like Robin Williams would be one of these people who would be very kind of collaborative. Did he have a lot of say and a lot of ideas towards the visual look of that film?
So here was the thing about Hook. And I was on Hook within about a year, I think it was, maybe a year and a half of starting really in the industry. I grew up without a dad, and Robin Williams was my surrogate father, whether he knew it or not. I grew up wanting to be Robin Williams, and his humor is really what got me through a lot of weird stuff as a kid. And my all-time favorite movies ever are Spielberg movies. So for me to be on the set of a movie with Robin Williams and Steven Spielberg right when I got to Hollywood was like the greatest thing in the world. Robin came into our studio. We did a head cast of him. I was so in awe and so just freaked out that I couldn't even talk to him. I couldn't even say anything. I just did my job. And then when we were on set, I got to watch him, you know, interact with everyone. And Robin had such a positive energy that no matter what was going on, when he would show up and he would be in the mix, it would lift the spirit of the room. And that would lift the spirit of the shot, and it would lift the performances, because Robin was just infectious with he was a sad guy inside, but man, he exuded so much happiness and joy and fun and everything that people just fed off of it and loved it, and it just was amazing. And then Spielberg let him do his thing, and I watched Spielberg direct, and I'm sure Spielberg thought I was stalking him, but I knew someday I wanted to direct, and I wanted to be as close to him as I could possibly be. And I got to watch him, how he motivated people, and how, you know, the energy that he would create on set. And then I've been on sets of other movies where you have directors that don't create an energy, and it's a big difference, man. The day takes a lot longer. The crew doesn't want to be there. It's important, you know, that a director create the correct vibe on a movie set to get the most out of the actors and the crew. And Spielberg and Robin were as good as anyone I've ever worked with. Those guys were amazing. And I got to work with Robin like 4 times after that. And I finally got, you know, comfortable enough to actually talk to him like face to face a few times. And it was by far one of the greatest experiences in my life. So that was an amazing thing for me. And I really feel fortunate to have even been on that set.
And you were shop crew on that film, which just every shot is so rich with so many little touches, so many visually wonderful things. You know, how much did it take? Like, how many things did you have to create for that?
Well, for Hook, we did so there's mermaids in the movie, so we created mermaids that actually swam underwater. So we did a whole couple days at the tank, and this all shot at the Sony lot. And then we also did the look for Hook, his bald head when he gets his head ripped, his wig is ripped off. We did the ears for Robin and for Julia Roberts. We also did likeness makeups of Julia Roberts and Robin, some people that played him and her. What else did we do? I'll tell you too, the sets on that film are some of the coolest sets I've ever seen. And the one main set that you see at the end with the giant alligator on it, that is the stage that they shot the Munchkins for the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, wow.
It's the same stage. It's legendary at Sony. So, which used to be MGM, I believe. So we were on like historical stages making historical movies, and I knew it. I was like pinching myself every day going, this is not the normal day. Remember this and you know, respect and appreciate where you are today. But it was amazing. The sets are like nothing I've ever seen. And that movie, you know, when it came out, I was extremely proud to have my name show up in the credits. I was like, that was a game changer for me.
I mean, when you talk about that, Dustin Hoffman's bald cap and the wig on top of it, it's not just creating these wonderful effects, which are just glorious enough to have worked on these films, but just the second you mention that, I can picture that moment where he pulls up the wig and he begs for his dignity back.
Right.
That's a moment like which lives forever in people's memories.
Well, and it's funny too, because the piece that he was wearing, it's a sculpted foam skull cap. And then because he has the really, really short cut hair, every single one of those hairs has to be punched into that foam piece. It takes forever, and it looks amazing when it's done. But, you know, there's so much work that goes into something that, you know, people kind of see and go, oh my God, he's bald. And then that's kind of it. They don't really think about it, but it's so much work that goes into making it look completely realistic enough that it doesn't continue to catch your eye.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you went on to work with Robin Williams a number of other times, but Mrs. Doubtfire, again, another classic from my childhood. You know, did you get to work on the Doubtfire suit on that? Or look?
So we built the suit. We built, you know, everything with Robin. We did the hair, the wigs, everything was pretty much done internally. I didn't get to go on set with that one because I wasn't in the makeup union yet. And that was done by a makeup artist named V. Neal, and she's a legendary makeup artist. But we sculpted all the makeups. We did all the makeup tests. We built the fat suit, which was done, I believe, by a woman named Linda Notaro, who worked with us for years and built all of these amazing fat suits for all these movies, like Big Mama's House and all this stuff. And yeah, we did everything in this little tiny shop too. It was in North Hollywood. But that experience was amazing. I actually, the one thing that I got to sculpt was, remember the face that gets run over by the car on the street?
Yes.
That was my sculpted tire face. In which I took a real tire and ran it over the clay just to make it as authentic as I could. But yeah, that was such a great movie. And I do remember, like, when we did the makeup test, and I remember hearing about on set, when Robin was in that makeup, Robin was gone. You never saw Robin until that makeup was off. He was Mrs. Doubtfire from that point on. I worked with Jim Carrey a few times too. It's the same thing with Jim. When Jim is in makeup, he's gone. You get the mask. He's the mask until that damn makeup is off. So these guys really, you know, when they embody the character, and I will say this too. I, as an actor, took a lot of that on myself, and I do a lot of charities at Christmas, especially as the Grinch, the Jim Carrey Grinch. And when I go and do these charities, like I did an old folks home, and I did some downtown LA kids stuff, and when I do these things and I get into put myself in full makeup, I don't break character until I'm out of makeup, and I kind of attribute that to watching these guys because they're so into that character that no matter what they say or do, they're responding as that character, and they get so used to it that it's actually hard to break character. And sometimes when I play the Grinch, it's hard for me to stop talking like the Grinch the next day when I'm at work doing something else. So I get why they did it, and I got to learn that from the greatest of the greats. So again, I just was lucky enough to be in the room while all this stuff was happening and get to pick up on it and learn from it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, even with the greats such as Jim Carrey, you mentioned there, Robin Williams, I can't imagine they get to put in, even with their great acting skills, they get to put that performance together if they can't see it in the mirror, if they can't see it to be it.
Yeah, I mean, those guys, you know, I mean, the three actors that I've worked with that were so into character that they never broke, and they are probably some of the three of maybe the best actors I've ever worked with, which was Robin, Jim, and I worked a lot with Gary Oldman. And when I worked with Gary Oldman on Dracula, and I worked with him on a movie called Tiptoes, Gary is one of those guys too. When you get into makeup, man, he is that guy, and everything about, you know, what they do. Also, and this was kind of scary, another person that's like that, I worked on the Iceman movie, and the lead actor in the Iceman, who's playing, you know, a murderous killer, also doesn't break character. So the entire time I was doing his makeup, man, that guy looked like he wanted to kill me. I'm blanking on his name right now, but great. Michael Shannon, just amazing. Some of these guys, you understand why they get hired time after time, because they are so believable as that character that you kind of lose the actor, and you're now dealing with that character the entire time you're on set. So you have to be very careful on set that you keep your distance and jump in when needed.
Oh, you mentioned Gary Oldman. I had a feeling that would be the third name to come out when you said there was three. But working on Bram Stoker's Dracula, that is remembered as such a wonderful version of Dracula in a very well-plowed field. How do you create something new? How do you do something different with such a character which has been around so long as Dracula?
Well, I'll just throw this out as a blanket statement for pretty much everything I'm talking about. It's never me by myself. There's always a team of people. There's always a group of at least probably 4 to 10 people that are involved in creating these characters, sometimes more. So, you know, it's a group of really talented people coming together and interjecting where needed to come up with these looks. For Dracula, you know, there at that time, creature suits really, you know, there was the Predator, and there was a couple other things, you know, and aliens, and there were some really cool creature suits. But I remember we were in a meeting with Coppola, and originally the bat creature in Dracula, that wasn't in the script. And the person that I was working for at that time was in a meeting with me and him and Coppola, and he brought up the idea of having a bat creature rather than having Gary Oldman sword fighting, looking like himself. And Coppola was like, well, what would that look like? Let me see. So we went back to the studio, and a guy named Mitch Devane, who is one of the greatest sculptors in the industry, did this maquette of what the bat creature would look like. And then we took it back to Coppola and showed it to him, and he goes, oh my God, that's amazing. So our company built the bat creature, and then Coppola didn't want the actors to see what they were going to see when they ran into the room when the bat creature's standing on the bed. And he goes, look what your God did to me. That whole scene, that was a one take. And when they came running in and saw that creature, they'd never seen it before. They had no idea what they were going to see when they walked in there or ran in there. So their expression and everything is as legitimate as it could ever get. And then after they played out the scene, Coppola called cut, and all the actors ran up to Gary and were, oh my God, and they were touching him and flipping out because they had no idea that was going to happen. And of course that character and some of the other makeups that we did for that film won the Best Makeup Academy Award that year. And I think that, the designs of that, there was a lot of great designers that worked at the shop with us at that time. Mitch Devane was one of them, a guy named Matt Falls, a guy named Glenn Hans. These guys were all these great sculptors. And as a team, everybody kind of came in and just really pulled it together and came up with some pretty groundbreaking stuff.
Oh, certainly. And as I say, it becomes memorable in something which we've seen so many times in so many other iterations, which is a wonder in itself. We spoke before about Jim Carrey and the Mask. I think that is a perfect example of what we were talking about earlier, about that blend between visual effects and real world effects. How much of what we saw in that film was actually there and how much was added on later? Because it is one where it's hard to tell, which is especially impressive, I think, for the time which it was made.
Well, we're talking about Dracula, right?
Oh, sorry, no, I was just moving on to the Mask.
The Mask. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Because that was Mask, such a cartoon of a film. But it kind of blended very nicely between visual effects and real world makeup. How much of it was actually there?
It was interesting because I remember when I first moved down to Los Angeles and I started working with this company, we had just finished Hook, I think it was, and we went and saw Jurassic Park as a group, and we went, oh crap, things are about to change. And when we did the Mask, that was the first time I remember losing a job to digital effects, because we had made the dog as a puppet that was going to do all this stuff, and they're like, oh no thank you, we don't need it, we're going to scan it and we're going to do it all digital. And we're like, oh really? That was the first time we had lost work to digital. And then after that, we started losing a lot of stuff. A lot of puppets that would have been made became digital characters instead, some creature, stuff like that. That was when digital really came in and started kind of taking over a lot of stuff. So that was really the turning point, when I remember saying, oh, okay, here we go, this is going to start being kind of the norm now. And but working in that film was great, because they being as cartoony as that movie is, and having Jim playing the Mask worked perfectly for them to have all those digital effects in there and have all the wacky, fun, cartoony stuff happen. It really took the movie to a new level. So I think it was a great thing that they had that in the movie, and it worked great, and it was a great movie. So again, I don't have a problem with digital effects. I just remember that being the first time we went, oh, we're not going to get paid for the puppets we just made. Or they're not going to be in the movie, or they're just going to get scanned. What does that mean, scanned?
Yeah, it does seem about the time where that kind of bellwether was shifting.
Yeah, that was it.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, again, another one of these kind of shows which it's just such an immersive world. Had it at that point when you worked on it, you worked on 4 episodes of that, I believe. Were you able to flex a lot of creativity, or was there a lot of set lore to that world at that stage?
Well, to be honest, okay, so I was working as a hired artist for a company that was up in Santa Clarita, where I live now. And right next door to our company was Saban, where they would shoot the Power Rangers. So we'd see the Power Rangers driving up and down our street on their motorcycles, being filmed all the time. I was working with my mentor at that time, Steve Wang, the guy that taught me, how to paint back in the day when I was up in Northern California. I was working with him, and he was working with Power Rangers and was actually directing episodes and things like that. So Steve Wang was really the guy that was designing and doing all the creative for that. I was just kind of his right-hand guy at that point, helping him build stuff. And at one point in time, I auditioned to be one of the lead villains, and I got the part. And then the day I was supposed to go in to start filming and do my thing, I got the phone call that I was replaced by the Mohawk guy from Mad Max. So I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Shit. So So we built some different characters for the show, mainly the villain characters and other characters. It wasn't. I don't remember that we did any of the Power Ranger characters themselves. They had a company that was building all the majority of the main stuff. But a lot of times, the outside companies would get hired to build the things that aren't in every show. And I think Steve, I think he was directing an episode, and there was a couple characters that they wanted him to make because Steve was known for designing the Predator. Steve and Matt Rose, Steve Wang and Matt Rose, the guys that taught me up in Northern California, who then moved down here and then got me my first job when I moved down here, actually were responsible for designing and creating the Predator for Stan Winston, and also they, along with some other guys too. There were other people in the mix, but they were kind of the main guys running with it. And also they created the creature from the Black Lagoon character for the Monster Squad. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, it's great creature. They became kind of the rock stars of the effects world, luckily. And then my friend Matt went off and became Rick Baker's right-hand guy for the rest of his career for the most part. And Steve directed some films and did a bunch of cool stuff, but kept pulling me in to help him on creature stuff. And I played a lot of creatures for a lot of films that he did. So it's been interesting because everybody kind of, a lot of my friends who I started off with ended up becoming these really big, top guys in the industry, and just remained my friends, remained the guys back in San Jose.
And when you mentioned there about your kind of work in front of the screen, is that something that you've always wanted to do alongside the makeup, or is it just kind of like opportunities have arisen as you've been working on the films?
No, I had a master plan before I moved down here that I wanted to get into makeup effects, establish myself. Then I wanted to start playing characters, creatures, and puppeteer. And then I wanted to write and direct my own films. So that's why I would throw myself from the get-go. I would throw myself into any creature suit anyone was making, puppeteer anything I possibly could. I got into SAG and became a SAG actor puppeteer on a movie called Jingle All the Way, where I remote control puppeteered this giant pink tiger character that we made called Booster. And then I started heading up puppeteering and a group of puppeteers for any project that we would get through our company that had puppets in the mix. I was the main guy, or I would play the creature. I doubled a few actors. I doubled Kevin Sorbo for a film that we did called Call the Conqueror, where we built this giant creature and Kevin had to wrestle with it, and he wasn't available. So I looked enough like him and was the same size and build that they threw me in.
I can see the Sorbo within you.
Yeah. So I got to play a lot of characters. I really enjoyed it. And then I got onto the show called Charmed, and they wanted all these creatures and characters, and it was really going to be difficult to do head cast and teeth cast and design and do everything that they needed in the time frame. So I made them a deal, and I'm like, look, how about if I just play all these creatures and I make myself unrecognizable every time I make myself up? That way I can use all my head cast and body cast. You don't have to pay for that, and I can make these things faster and quicker and cheaper. And they're like, yeah, that sounds good. Let's see how that works. So I played a superhero or super villain character called the Aggressor. It's actually the only character you can kind of tell that it's me. Otherwise, I'm completely covered from that point on. And they're like, okay, yeah, you can do this, no problem. So then I played probably about a dozen or two different creatures on the show from season 5 to 10, which was great because it just made it easy. And it was kind of a joke. We'd sit around the table at the reads, and they'd read like, nondescript creature, and then they'd all look at me and laugh and point. So it kind of got silly, but it was great, and it saved them money, got me a lot of on-camera characters, and I really enjoyed that. And again, I was very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time and kind of motivate what I wanted to have happen.
I love the kind of kinetic energy of what you're speaking about of, there's something which needs doing over there. I'll do it. I'll jump into the dumpster. I'll do this. I'll act on screen. How do you keep up your energy doing so many things at once?
I was diagnosed as a kid as being hypertensive, which means I have way more energy than I should. I'm also a drummer. I started playing drums when I was 5. So I'm pretty overly energetic and pretty motivated to the point where it might be annoying. So I've just used that. And I do a lot of motivational speaking at and film talks and stuff at film schools and makeup schools and stuff like that. And I'll answer any question you want about makeup or film making or any of that stuff. But one of the main things I always try to tell people and talk about more than anything is just being really positive and going out and not being afraid to take chances and go do what it is you really want to do. Because it's, I've been told so many times, no, you're not going to do this. And I just have this weird thing where I have to prove people wrong. And I have too much energy to not do it. So I always take it as a challenge. And I try to tell other people, be positive and it'll work for you, and just have a lot of motivation, drive, and it'll pay off in the long run.
You mentioned the drumming there. Is that something that you managed to pull into your film sometimes?
I was the lead singer. I was a drummer when I was a kid, but I became a lead singer of a band that had a record deal and was touring back in the late 80s. And then my career ended overnight. Literally, MTV changed their whole programming, and all of the major rock tours were being canceled right around 1990. And I made a switch, and that's when I moved down here and gave up music. And I had already started building my portfolio and had met Matt and Steve and already had this as my backup. So I moved down here in 1990 and actually just stopped playing music altogether. And I'd been a musician since I was 5 years old. And I just was like, I just completely shifted gears. But I came up with a project that is going to be my next film that I'm trying to get financed this month and shoot in April, which is a rock and roll comedy of which I am playing a character in that is a drummer. So I can't give too much out of it, but I brought my drums back out last year and reconnected with my drums. And let's just say music is a very good outlet. And this project that I'm putting together is potentially the coolest thing I've ever done in my career. So I'm looking forward to moving that forward and telling everybody about it once it's ready.
That sounds very satisfying. And you mentioned the band you're in. Is anything still around online of that? And what was the band name?
Well, the band's name was Dreamer, but the funny thing is I never put anything online really. And back then there was no online. So, there was nowhere to post. You didn't post. There wasn't internet yet. So it was like 1989, 1990. It's funny because I have my Instagram, I posted some of my old footage of my old band and things. So if anyone wants to see something that'll make them laugh for sure, they can go on my Todd Tucker official Instagram and there's video of me with long blonde curly hair looking pretty silly.
Just because the audio of this is going on my radio show. So like if there was any tunes to put in here.
No, I wish. We are actually about to write an entire album's worth of original 80s sounding music for this film that we're doing. So I'm going to get to go back into the recording studio again and go back to my roots. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, and just any excuse to write in that kind of 80s. I'm picturing power ballads. I don't know why, but that's the first which came to my mind.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've got in this film that I'm putting together, I've already got major rock stars in the film, already agreed to being in the film. I'm talking major rock stars. And all the music that this band that I'm putting together that's going to be in the movie, all the original music is going to be that music that continues to be retro. It's that upbeat commercial rock, Journey, Queen, Foreigner, Styx. I mean, it's that real, that fun party music that we remember that used to make you feel good back when you'd hear it. So, real positive, upbeat stuff. So I'm a big fan of that type of music.
And it's such smart timing because I mean that music never really went away, but it's certainly having even more of a resurgence at the moment, I feel.
20-year-old kids continue to find those bands. They continue to be, I mean, there's just something magical and upbeat about that music that just makes you feel good. And I think that's why it continues to be retro all the time. Those bands and that music is just, it hits a note with people, and it's a good note. It's a positive note. And there's a lot of negativity in the younger generations that I think, listening to some good, fun 80s rock would be a good dose of happiness.
I don't know. I think going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I feel like this is the Most positive and most negative generation at the same time somehow that we've got now.
Yeah. As stupid as this sounds, I am on a true mission right now to create this project and try to make people smile a little bit, because the younger generation, the 20 and younger generation right now, Gen Z is I think a little bit in a bad place, a very dark place, just because they're so locked into phones and antisocial. And I know I have a daughter who's in that world, and it's a very it's kind of a negative generation, I think. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that, it's probably our fault as adults for having things, the way they were growing up. But I just want to, I want to try to recreate that feeling that I had when I was a kid listening to this music, which just made me feel good. It just made me feel good about life and everything. So I feel like, and it does clearly is the music that 20-year-old kids, decade after decade, they respond to. It's the same type of music. It's Journey, it's Styx, it's Bon Jovi. It's that fun 80s rock music that we loved. So I want to shove that down that generation's throat and make them smile, damn it.
Good mission, my
Sorry.
friend. Good mission. Hey, just going back to a few of your other projects, Friends you worked on. It seems like I mean, I don't know if this was the case, but it's like the first thing I picture when I picture someone being a makeup artist on Friends is the iconic look of the Friends and how they were so glamorous and they were the people to look like at the time. Was that the side of it you were working on, or was it more?
No, I had nothing to do with that. Sorry. No, you know what? It was because that was all beauty and straight makeup, and we weren't beauty and straight. So what we got hired for was there was a couple episodes that I came in and did some specialty makeups. There was one episode where Joey shaves his eyebrows really thin, and that was something that I had to do on the actor while they were shooting live. So I literally had 15 minutes in between one scene to another scene to put that appliance on him and have him ready to go with a fake eyebrow. So that was one thing we did. But the main thing really that I was involved with on Friends was that I was the head puppeteer for the animatronic baby that was baby Emma.
They had an animatronic baby. I had no idea.
Oh yeah. They couldn't afford the real baby. Was problematic at times because you can only have a baby on set for so long. The baby will cry while they're doing takes. There's just a lot of elements. So anytime they didn't need the real baby, it was the animatronic baby, and then I would be on set making it wiggle and do its stuff so it stayed alive and was believable. So that was really the majority of what I did on Friends. But it was a lot of fun too, because they would take the baby in between takes when they needed something to entertain the audience, and they would put the baby on a chair and I would make it dance to music and stuff, and the audience would enjoy it.
Of all the things I thought you might have said you worked on Friends, an animatronic baby was furthest from my thought. I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know that thing ever existed, so they're kind of surprised when I mentioned that's what we did.
That's wonderful. And as if you haven't played with enough wonderful IP toys, Pirates of the Caribbean with Johnny Depp. Now, I feel like that's a movie which, as someone in the UK, it exists in a weird kind of space of, I think it benefited in America of everyone knowing the ride, and it benefited in the UK of people not, and because we can be a slightly cynical breed here in the UK. Did you have to take a lot of notes from what was in the ride, or was it all about kind of reinvention and making it new?
Again, we had a huge team of creators on that and designers. We referencing the ride was always part of the game plan, was making sure that it had the spirit of the ride. That was always something they wanted to do. But they also, they gave us all these actors that we did head cast of that were the pirates, and then we created all the pirate looks. We did it digitally first as a Photoshop, and then we created the looks, all the teeth and all the scars and the wigs and all the different things. And then we were wondering when Johnny was going to come in. And then all of a sudden we got a call that the movie was on hold because they went to Johnny Depp and they said they wanted him to come in for us to design his look. And they wanted him to look like a sexy Captain Hook. And Johnny said, absolutely not. I want to look homeless. I want to look like Keith Richards. And they were like, not a chance. And he went, okay, see you guys later. And At least this is what I heard. I don't know what really happened, but that's what I was told. And they went, "Oh, you know what? Actually, you're right. That would be a great idea." Luckily, the studios listened to him because clearly the way he portrayed Jack Sparrow is the reason why Pirates of the Caribbean, also being a good movie, but reason why that movie has so many sequels is because that character was so great. So he created that look on his own. He designed his own look, and he continued to design his own look for a lot of the different films he did after that with his makeup artist. So we didn't create his look, but we created the other looks. We also wanted to create the looks of the ghosts when they became ghosts, but that's when they were like, "No, we don't need your help. We got ILM doing digital," and we're like, "But we got all these cool designs." We're like, "Doesn't matter. We're covered. Thank you." So we and I didn't go on set for that one either. I was involved with the makeup test and the designing part of it, but we had a guy named Miles Tevis and who was a great designer came in and he did a bunch of sculpting, and one of my key artists, a guy named Martin Astles, and a bunch of these guys that are like the top guys in the industry. We hired in, and we had a lot of films going on at the same time. We had, I think, 2 other films happening right around the same time we were doing Pirates. So we had 3 films going at the same time, with Pirates being one of them. So it was I remember, I think we had about 70 people working in the studio at that point. So it was a pretty big film. And I think the first Pirates for me is the best one ever.
Yeah, it doesn't get
Hands
much
down.
better. Yeah, and I'm so glad. It just seems mad to me. Like I do get it. Not every actor is going to have the vision of Johnny Depp and of Robin Williams and some of these other people. But when you have got a creative mind like that, you'd be foolish not to listen to their vision for the character, I would think.
Yeah, it doesn't happen a lot of times, but we do try to work with the actor when we're designing stuff. We try to get their input because we want them to feel like they're involved in the evolution of the character. And we want their input. We want them to like the look so that they can really work through it, because for an actor, and I know this for myself when I act in makeup, when you're in that makeup, the best thing, and I always tell actors this, and I watched Gary Oldman do this, and I saw what came out of it. He would get in makeup, and then he would go into a room with a mirror and lock himself in for like an hour and just look at himself in the mirror doing expressions and come up with and visually figure out what that makeup does so that he could build his character around it. And I always tell actors, when you get the makeup on in the makeup test, have some you time. Just go into the mirror and discover what this is and what you can do with it with nobody watching, just so you can do whatever feels right and just really see what the face does and how it works. And it really helps them kind of discover the character. But we do try to get input from the actors to make sure that they like what they're wearing also. And they usually give us good input. So it's helpful.
And how about for yourself when you're starting to create a look for a world? What's your kind of process? Do you immerse yourself in like pirates? Do you immerse yourself in pirate imagery and watch practical films? What's the kind of process like for you?
Well, you have to take the direction of the director and the production as to what their vision is, because it's not my vision. Our job is to enhance the vision of the director or whoever's running the creative. So for that one, we knew that the ride was a huge visual aspect of what they wanted to keep consistent. We also looked into a lot of visuals of what real pirates of that time, pirates in general, different regions of pirates. There's so many different types of visuals that came with historical pirates and people in that time frame. So, and then coming up with something too that visually is interesting. Sometimes historical stuff is a great starting point, and then you take that and try to enhance it to make it look a little bit more interesting or a little bit more creative or a little bit more edgy or just something to give it your own little bit of design. And then just present it to the director and the producer. And a lot of times we'll do, anywhere from 10 to 20 different looks to show them so they can really lock in on what they want and see options, But it's so much fun though, because I actually enjoy having a little bit of a reference of what they want, because then it's a challenge for me to figure out how I can give them the best version of what they see in their head. And then it really excites them, because then a lot of times you surpass what they originally thought, and it just makes them really happy. And it's fun to make them happy, because it's great to see their vision come to life. And I, as a director, know what that's like, and it's pretty damn cool.
Fantastic. Now, of course, one of the things we're primarily here to talk about is the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You worked on the look of the new Leatherface character. Uh, Again, it's kind of one of these iconic looks. What felt important to include from the original visual language of those films, and what did you want to kind of like enhance and do something a bit different with?
Well, that character has such a huge audience, and people, there's love for that character. So it's kind of tricky because, again, you want to take what is, the vision of the director, and now you have a huge audience fan base that also has a certain amount of expectations. So for this one, the directors only wanted to focus on the first film, as if none of the other films ever were made. So every reference was the first film only. And when they cast Mark Burnham to be Leatherface, when he came in, Mark, we did a head cast on him, and basically, his goal was to try to pull the elements from the performance that Gunnar Hansen did when he played the original Leatherface, and pull some of those elements in so that it felt authentic to this character. And then for us, it was really about creating the look based on what was happening in the script. I can't give anything away yet because it doesn't come out until February 18th on Netflix. But I will say, what his makeup is something that actually happens within the storyline. So we were kind of keeping it real to what happens in the story, and then following that through. The character is not a lumbering oaf. This character is moving fast. He is a badass. So there's a lot of action in this film. He is tearing people new assholes. It is pretty violent, pretty much what the audience would expect, and then some. The kills in this are some of these kills I've never seen anything like it before. When I read the script, I was like, how in the hell are they going to pull this off? But they did. And it's an amazing thing. The director, David Blue Garcia, did an amazing job. The visual look of the film, it looks like a huge studio film. It was the DP was a guy named Ricardo Diaz. And Ricardo, it looks like a giant cinematic, beautiful film, but it just gets really mean. And the character of Leatherface has a certain element about it now where you kind of understand a little bit better why he is and who he is. And I think it kind of brings a little bit of sympathy to his character, but at the same time, he's just an animal destruction machine. So I think the fans are going to really dig this. And I think what we did for him look wise is a little different, but again, it's based on what happens in the script. So I don't think fans are going to come back to us and go, oh, you shouldn't have done that, because it's what happens in the movie. So I can't really change what happens in the movie, but I think it works really well. And the effects are off the charts. We created Leatherface design and makeup and everything, his look head to toe. We created what his body shape was going to look like, what the wardrobe would look like. The gore effects in the film shot over in Bulgaria, and the gore effects in the film were done by some local people there with the help of my main artist, one of my main key artists who actually designed the Leatherface look, is a guy named Martin Astles. And Martin actually went over also to Bulgaria as a one-man show during the height of COVID, went over there and worked with local effects guys to help create all of the additional gore effects and everything while he was focusing on Leatherface. But I think the fans are going to really dig this. I'm, of course, a fan of Texas Chainsaw. That was a game changer movie back in '74. So I'm really excited to see how people respond, but I do think they're going to be pretty damn happy.
And just to get something on Netflix, like the streaming is obviously where it's at these days. It's a very exciting frontier of filmmaking now. Were Netflix involved from the beginning, or is that something which did they come on board later?
No, actually, so it was funny because I got I reached out to a producer that I had worked with years ago, named Herb Gaines. And Herb Gaines was a producer that I met when we worked on The Watchmen. And then I also worked with him on the movie G.I. Joe and Jack Reacher 2. And he was located in Louisiana. He had moved to Los Angeles and was now working for Legendary. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, Herb, I really like to work with you again. And he goes, hey, you got perfect timing. I'm doing this little movie for Legendary and I need your help. I need you to design the lead character. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Who is it? And he goes, it's Leatherface. And I started laughing because I thought he was messing with me. And he goes, what's so funny? I go, are you serious? And he goes, yeah. And I go, oh, I'm so sorry. Absolutely. What can I do for you? And then so we went and started meeting with the at that point there's two directors that were originally going to direct it. We met with them and Herb over at the Legendary offices and started the ball rolling, and then COVID shut everything down. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to lose this. This is going to go away. And then he called me, Herb called me and said, hey, we're moving forward. If you guys are up, let's do this. And I'm like, you got it, dude. So we brought in a crew. We worked extremely safe. This was at the height of COVID. We were doing all of the meetings through something that was called Zoom, which we had never used before. And now we were using that to do all the designing and interact with everybody. And then what happened was Netflix was nowhere in the mix at this point. The other production team that was involved was a production team called Bad Hombre. And we were working with Fede Alvarez, who was the head producer over there, and he was killer. He knew exactly what he wanted. We started interacting with him. Those guys did the new Evil Dead. They've done a lot of great stuff. So we were really excited to be working with Legendary and Bad Hombre. And then Netflix came in at the end. After the movie was done, it kind of sat around for a little while. We were wondering why it wasn't coming out, but we knew that the theaters weren't really doing anything yet. So we were assuming that they were holding off waiting for theaters to open. But then we had heard that the movie was bought by Netflix and was going to stream on Netflix. And we're hoping the reason why Netflix is doing this is because they might want to continue doing more with the character. So we are hoping for sure that this will spring off into more. And we would love to be in the mix as it moves forward.
I can't wait to see it. Just as a little teaser, I know obviously you can't be very specific, but is there any moment like you could sort of like just tease out a little bit that we should look out for in this new Texas?
Oh man, what can I tease? Okay, I will say this. There is a scene in the movie that has to do with a bus that I have never seen before, and it is the most intense thing I've ever seen on film.
Fantastic. And
just when you see the movie, take that note and tell me if you agree with me.
I can't wait. Well, look, sir, I know we've covered so much, but there's so much more of your career still we haven't managed to. All the Disney shows that you've worked on, so much else. Please, if you can spare some time another time, we'd love to have you back on to talk a bit more about your career.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. And again, if anyone wants to, you can check out my company, Illusion Industries, at illusionindustries.com. And then I've got a bunch of personal stuff and a bunch of behind the scenes stuff that I post on my Todd Tucker official Instagram and Facebook. So you can check that out. And yeah, I'd be happy to come back on anytime you'd like. And I hope you enjoy the film. I expect it to be a big talking point, I believe, on the 19th of February.
I was going to say remind us of the date, but 19th of February, guys, please, of course. I was going to say subscribe to Netflix.
February 18th on Netflix. So the 19th is when everybody's going to be on the phone talking about it or on the internet.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time tonight, Todd. It's been wonderful going through these legendary films and TV shows that you've been a part of. Thank you very much for sparing some time for us.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, sorry, I almost forgot. I like to end these things on the radio version, which will go out tomorrow, by playing a track selected by my guest. Have you got a track you'd like to play? Maybe one of those 80s classics you were talking about?
Oh, really? If you can play Feels Like the First Time by Foreigner.
That sounds good. If you're listening in the radio version, here is Foreigner right now. But for everyone watching tonight, thank you very much for watching. I've been Dr. Squee. That was my show. I've been joined by the mighty Todd Tucker. And please remember, everyone, in a world where you can be absolutely anything, please be kind. Oh, and now my mouse is not going to work. I did that classy outro, and then it all goes wrong the last minute.
It sounded good.
This is what you get when you've got a battery-powered mouse. This happens. Thank you, everyone, for watching. That was my show.